Hello everybody, Infinite Shinjo here, and welcome to the 5th Yu-Gi-Oh! Review. And today I'm going to be discussing Yu-Gi-Oh! Arc 5. So I want to get this out of the way before I actually get into the discussion points. Long-time subscriber of the channel, Yuya is a huge fan of the show. Obviously, considering he has the same name as the protagonist of the show. I'm not going to let that sway me in one direction or the other. I'm just going to talk about the show itself, what I liked, what I didn't like. Let's get into this. So, starting with the pros, I really like the concept of characters using older decks. Because you literally have characters using Gem Knights, X-Sabers, and even some of the newer archetypes. There's the Speedroids. I really like the Speedroids. And then the Wind Witch, I think one of the sisters uses. And then even older decks get new cards, like the Red Dragon archetype, the Blackwing archetype, the Cyber Angels. Obviously, characters come back, Jack Crow and Alexis, so that makes sense that they would do that. But I just like the concept of them using older decks, or even older cards that I'm more familiar with. They even do a retrain of the Earthbound Immortals, and I just really like that. And on that note, having 4 different dimensions for different summoning mechanics is really nice. Well, technically 5 dimensions, counting the one that Yuya is from. Because in a weird way, it makes sense, because at that point, you have a fusion dimension, synchro, XCs, and I can't think of what the last one is. I'm a little bit stumped right now. Oh, you know what? I think there only is 3 other dimensions, because I think a case can be made for the dimension Yuya is from being the pendulum dimension or something like that. But then you got like the fusion, synchro, and XC's dimension. Stuff like that is like really cool, because I could see something forming with that. And even the beginning of the show, when they start traveling through the dimensions, it is really interesting how they're going to handle it. Because they start by going into... Shoot, I think they go to the synchro dimension first. And then XCs, and then finally fusion. I think that's how it is. I might be wrong on that. But they go to the first dimension that they go to. They hang out there for a bit. They duel, and by they I mean basically Yuya. And then they go off to the next dimension. After fixing everything, or trying to fix everything. And we just keep on going. That is really cool. Just wish they kept up with it. I touched on this with Zexal last time, with the whole introduction and big moment where Ray turns out to be Vector, evil villain mastermind. I really liked the introduction of Sora as an antagonist, and really liked how that was done facing off against Shay. But they didn't really live up to it. Like, Sora is a great villain for that point in the show. But after they start dimension hopping, Sora just kind of falls to the wayside. Sora ends up not doing as much, and of course, it's one of those things where Sora was a bad guy, but now Sora's a good guy and stuff like that. At least with characters like Vector, you can see how it happens, because he did hang out with Yuma a lot before he got his reveal as being a villain. So with that, you can see it. Of course, it's a similar thing with Sora here, but whatever. But realistically, those are the only things that I really like. Besides the English dub OP, I really like that. Of course, all of them are good in their own right. But let's get on to the stuff that I didn't like. Here's where things get very dicey. So, to start, and I feel like this is the biggest problem that I have with it. I know I've even touched on this before, where, like, which dimension was it? I think it's the XC's dimension? It might be the XC's dimension, it might be the Synchro dimension, where the world is, well, I think in all dimensions, the world is literally just falling apart, buildings are being destroyed. I think that was Zexal. I think that was the XC's dimension. The world is literally being destroyed, And Yuya's over here in the corner. Let's try and smile, everybody. And like, I get it. Yuya is trying to make people be optimistic and whatever, but there's a limit to how far you can go. And the fact that Yuya is trying to make people smile through this either makes him one of the more wholesome anime characters that you could ever see, or somebody that could really care less that the world's being destroyed and he's just like, who cares about all that? Let's just smile. Because there are literally times where you just need to sit back and process everything. And Yuya over here trying to make people smile is certainly not helping the situation. It's just not really realistic. Like, if people were around in the world wars, not the best example, I know, but that's basically what it is with Arc 5. But just say that people were around, the world getting destroyed and everything, and Yuya's just here. Who cares about all that? Just smile. Smile's gonna make everything okay, but like, sometimes that's not enough. It's a little bit of a rant, I know, but I just never understood why he's so determined to get people to smile when it's a great sentiment, and it certainly wraps up nicely with the end of the show, but it's just not realistic, and I can't get over that. On that note, the plot at the end of the show is notoriously a mess. And it's a mess for both versions, the anime and the manga. Cause the anime is basically ending with Yuya being the only U-boy allowed to exist, and what's her name in the dub? Zuzu being the only girl allowed to exist. I guess they just said, screw all the other U-boys and the bracelet girls. And in the manga, it's not any better. Apparently, the manga, it's something like, at the end of the show, they find out that Zuzu is Yuya's mother or something like that. I can't remember the details or something. But yeah, it's something like that. And it's just starting to make me wonder if every Yu-Gi-Oh! Is basically the same, where the main guy and the main girl are supposed to be like a couple or something like that, and Zuzu is supposed to be the mother. That just makes things very awkward. I don't know. In a way, it might have been easier to just end it with the manga ending for the anime, because at least with that you'd have people talking about it. And it just seems like it's so off the wall with the manga ending that I honestly, I don't want to say I would have been fine with it, because each ending has its own share of problems, but like, I would have liked to see how they would have handled the manga ending. Dipping a bit into the positive, we'll say the alternate people like Crow, Jack, Kite, all of them were a good idea, except for the fact that they all got shafted, because it just ended up being all of them. I think the only one that's an exception is Alexis. All of them dueled Yuya, learned the error of their ways because they hung out with Yuya's dad or something before, or something like that. Every single one is, hey, let's duel. Jack actually wins. I don't think Crow wins or loses, but I think they do duel. I can't remember exactly how that happened. But basically each one is, Yuya, duel these past characters. You win, you lose, who cares? You're trying to make people smile. And interlocking with that, there are so many characters with this show. Not even counting the ones that they brought in before, like the Kite, Jack, Crow. You also have the main group, the Lancers, if you will. You have Yuya, Declan, Reira. Reira's the one I was talking about in the last one, I just couldn't think. Gong, Silvio, Shay, Serena, all the other bracelet girls, all the U-boys, and then you got people like the Battle Beast. I remember that from Yu-Gi-Oh! Everything's video. And then what's his name? The guy with the big nose in the synchro dimension. I can't think of his name. He might be the fusion dimension. I can't think of. Basically, there are a lot of characters in this show, and they're trying to get all of these past characters introduced as well, but it just turns into a big jumble mess. Because, like I touched on earlier, I cannot think of a duel in this show that Yuya isn't a part of, with the exception of the duel between Shay and Sora, and the duel between Shay and Dennis. There's another character, Dennis, and Sora. That kind of falls into the problem that I've had with other Yu-Gi-Oh shows, where the main character is the only one in the world that can duel. Like, sure, why not? And they don't even get me started on Yuto. Yuto just got absolutely shafted by getting sucked inside Yuya, and that's basically his coffin. Overall, with a show like this, it had promise at the start, but introducing so many characters and only having maybe half of them even duel, it just wasn't a good look. And the ending, both the anime and the manga, certainly didn't do it any favors. So, with that in mind, my favorite character from the show is Serena. I was gonna say Shay because I really like the Raid Raptors, and Sora I really like the Fluffles, but I'm gonna go with Serena. And that's only because the most underdeveloped character is Zuzu, Lulu, and Rin. All the other Bracelet girls. And it just boggles me that a character like Serena is such a standout character only because the other Bracelet girls are so incompetent. I like Zuzu's little introduction at the start, and she makes an effort to learn fusion. But that's basically it. Lulu and Rin, I gotta be honest, I can't tell you which one is which. I think Lulu is the one with purple hair, but I couldn't even tell you. But that's not even diminishing Serena, because Serena is a cool character. And it's even more noticeable when the other Bracelet girls are just so worthless, more or less. They just become damsels in distress, and half of them only duel when they're mind controlled. A problem I have with Tori from Zexal. But yeah, on another final note, I'm surprised this isn't the one that's been hit with the backlash when Yu-Gi-Oh! Zexal is. Because realistically, Zexal is leagues better than this, in my opinion. But you'll have to let me know what you think. If you enjoyed, hit that like button down below. Subscribe if you haven't. We got one more Yu-Gi-Oh! To go, and I'll see you next time. Momentai.